For more than 6 decades, Ron Howard seemed immune to scandal. Hollywood adored him, the freckle-faced boy from The Andy Griffith Show, the red-haired teenager from Happy Days, and later the soft-spoken filmmaker behind Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind. His image was spotless, polite, loyal, and humble. He was the kind of celebrity who didn't court attention. He earned respect quietly. Yet in recent years, that silence shattered. It began with a conversation he didn't intend to ignite. Asked about politics, art, and the fallout from his own film Hillbilly Elegy, Howard offered a calm, measured answer. He wasn't angry, wasn't defensive, just honest. But honesty can be dangerous in today's climate. Within hours, his words were clipped, quoted, and dissected across social media. Ron Howard breaks his silence, headlines screamed, as if the man who had built his career on integrity had suddenly become controversial. For decades, Ron had chosen grace over gossip. He avoided Hollywood feuds, refused to exploit personal drama, and preferred storytelling to self-promotion. When critics slammed his films, he listened, learned, and moved on. When fame tested him, he stayed grounded. But this time, the calm turned into confrontation, not because of scandal, but because of sincerity. He had simply spoken from the heart about division, decency, and the exhaustion of constant outrage. The reaction revealed something deeper about the industry that shaped him. Hollywood had changed. Civility, once valued, now seemed old-fashioned. Nuance was mistaken for weakness. And Ron Howard, the man who built a lifetime on quiet strength, found himself at the center of a storm he never wanted. Yet even in controversy, he remained the same thoughtful, respectful, and unwilling to trade dignity for applause. His words, though misunderstood, reminded audiences why he mattered. They came from a man who had seen both the best and worst of fame, and still believed in kindness. "I'm proud of my work," he said simply, "and I try to do right by people. That's all I've ever wanted." Those words, humble yet powerful, set the tone for a story far bigger than a viral headline. This is the journey of Ron Howard, the actor, the director, the husband, the father, and the man who proved that even in a world addicted to noise, silence can speak volumes. Before the fame, before the Oscars, there was Duncan, Oklahoma, a quiet town where Ron Howard's story began. Born on March 1, 1954, to Rance Howard and Gene Spiegel, Ron came into a world already orbiting around storytelling. His father was an actor, writer, and director. His mother was an actress. In the Howard family, imagination wasn't a hobby, it was a language. Rance, originally named Rance Beckenhall, changed his surname to Howard in 1948 to help his acting career. It was a small act of reinvention that foreshadowed his son's future mastery of transformation. By the time Ron was born, his father was serving in the U.S. Air Force. But the arts were never far away. When Ron was barely old enough to talk, his parents introduced him to studio life, a place where he would one day make history. His early education was unconventional. While other kids learned arithmetic in ordinary classrooms, Ron received tutoring on studio lots between takes. He attended Robert Louis Stevenson Elementary, David Starr Jordan Junior High, and later John Burroughs High School, all in Burbank, California, just minutes from Hollywood's beating heart. There, amid cameras and chalkboards, he grew up learning two worlds at once, the discipline of academics and the chaos of performance. Ron's curiosity about storytelling was apparent even as a child. While most kids dreamed of cowboys or superheroes, he was fascinated by the people who made them come alive. The writers, the directors, the editors behind the camera. That curiosity eventually led him to the University of Southern California's School of Cinematic Arts. He didn't graduate, but his time there left a lasting impression. It gave him a glimpse of the craft he would soon master. Even at that young age, he knew his heart wasn't just in acting, it was in creation. "I always knew I'd end up behind the camera," he once said. It was an instinct passed down from his parents, shaped by countless hours spent watching his father work, learning to read scripts before most kids learned to ride bikes. By the time Ron Howard turned 10, he had already appeared on television, learned the rhythms of production, and absorbed the value of hard work. But what no one could have predicted was how quickly that small-town boy would capture the heart of America and change Hollywood forever. By the time most kids were learning to spell their names, Ron Howard was learning his marks on camera. His rise began in the golden glow of early American television, a time when families gathered around black and white screens and innocence still sold stories. At just 6 years old, Ron became a household name as Opie Taylor, the wide-eyed son of Sheriff Andy Taylor in The Andy Griffith Show. From 1960 onward, his cherubic face and honest delivery defined American wholesomeness. "Pay," he'd say softly, tugging at Andy Griffith's sleeve, and millions of viewers melted. But behind that gentle smile was a child learning not just lines but life lessons from a master craftsman. Andy Griffith wasn't just a co-star, he became a mentor, shaping Ron's sense of timing, story, and integrity. Ron later said, "He taught me more about comedy, pacing, and heart than any school ever could." The set was his classroom. Between takes, he'd watch the crew light scenes, adjust cameras, and shape mood with movement. Other kids went home from school to play. Ron went home from work to dream. He wasn't a performer chasing fame, he was a student studying storytelling. And yet, even at that age, he carried himself with uncanny professionalism. Cast and crew called him Little Man. He never forgot lines, never threw tantrums, never treated fame as a toy. Still, childhood under the spotlight wasn't simple. The praise that came with Opie's success carried pressure. Audiences expected perfection, directors expected precision, and Ron, barely out of kindergarten, delivered both. His parents kept him grounded, insisting that acting was a job, not a lifestyle. It worked. While other child stars crumbled under fame, Ron grew into it gracefully. When the Andy Griffith Show ended in 1968, America lost a piece of its innocence, and Ron lost the role that had defined his childhood. Yet, rather than fading, he transitioned with rare maturity. The lessons he'd absorbed from Griffith became his compass. He once reflected, "Andy taught me that every story, no matter how small, has a truth worth telling." That belief would later guide every film he directed. Opie Taylor may have been America's favorite boy, but behind those freckles was a mind quietly preparing to redefine Hollywood's storytelling. When the Andy Griffith Show ended in 1968, Ron Howard was only 14, too old to be America's little boy, but too young to be seen as anything else. The industry that had adored Opie Taylor suddenly wasn't sure what to do with him. He wasn't cute enough for child roles anymore, and not yet mature enough for adult ones. For the first time, Ron faced the paradox of child stardom, being famous and forgotten all at once. He kept working, determined not to fade. Roles in shows like Daniel Boone and Gentle Ben proved his range, but the shift wasn't easy. Behind the camera, he was restless, caught between two worlds. One that wanted to keep him a boy, and another that demanded he grow up overnight. The cheerful kid who made America smile was quietly wrestling with anxiety, pressure, and identity. Years later, he admitted, "The system is set up to make child performers feel like failures as they go through adolescence." He wasn't exaggerating. Hollywood wasn't built for long-term growth, it was built for novelty. When the novelty wore off, so did the calls. The limelight that once felt like home became cold and uncertain. But where some child stars rebelled, Ron learned resilience. His parents insisted he stay in school, live normally, and understand that acting was just one part of his life. He focused on education, joined his school's drama program, and worked on small projects to stay sharp. It wasn't glamorous, but it was grounding. Even in this turbulent phase, he carried something most young actors lacked: humility. He remembered everything Andy Griffith had taught him about patience and professionalism. Those lessons became armor against disappointment. He learned that success wasn't measured by applause, but by perseverance. In interviews years later, Ron described those teenage years as a bridge I had to build myself. That bridge carried him from childhood to adulthood without collapse, a rare feat in Hollywood. He might not have had blockbuster roles then, but he was building something more valuable: an understanding of storytelling, timing, and character depth that would one day make him one of the most respected directors in film history. The boy who once symbolized innocence was learning endurance. The world had stopped calling him Opie, but soon it would call him something far greater: a filmmaker. By the early 1970s, Ron Howard was no longer the boy next door, but television wasn't done with him yet. In 1974, he was cast as Richie Cunningham in Happy Days, a wholesome high schooler with a good heart and nervous smile. The series became a runaway hit, one of the most beloved sitcoms of the decade. Every week, millions tuned in to see Richie and his leather-jacketed friend, Arthur, Fonzie, navigate small-town life. The chemistry was perfect, too perfect as it turned out. At first, Ron was the show's anchor. But as the seasons rolled on, something changed. The audience fell in love with Fonzie, played by Henry Winkler. His charisma lit up the screen, and soon he was the show's star attraction. Executives even floated the idea of renaming it Fonzie's Happy Days. For Ron, who had spent years carrying sitcoms, it was a quiet heartbreak. He later recalled, "It did not escape my notice that the Fonz was getting more and more screen time. His stress built up in silence. He developed eczema, breaking out in rashes across his eyelids. He even began losing his hair, clumps at a time, a cruel irony for a young man on national television. Yet, despite the humiliation, he never lashed out. He showed up, delivered, and smiled." The tension between Ron and his fame was invisible to the audience. On screen, he was the model of optimism. Off screen, he was questioning who he really was. Did people love Richie Cunningham, or did they love the idea of him? Was there a place in Hollywood for the man behind the smile? In those uncertain years, Ron found an unexpected source of strength: love. On November 1st, 1970, long before Happy Days became a phenomenon, he'd gone on a first date with a young woman named Cheryl Howard. They saw It's a Mad, 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 Mad World and ate pizza afterward. By 1975, they were married. She wasn't part of Hollywood, and that was exactly what he needed. Her normalcy became his anchor. As Happy Days dominated pop culture, Ron's personal life remained grounded. Behind the laughter and applause, he was quietly laying the foundation for a life of purpose, loyalty, and creative freedom. He didn't know it yet, but Happy Days would be his last major acting role. Soon, he'd step behind the camera and change the industry forever. Every Hollywood story has its bright lights and heartbreaks, but Ron Howard's greatest success wasn't found on set, it was found at home. His love story with Cheryl Howard began in 1970 when Ron was just 16. Their first date was simple, a movie, a pizza, and laughter that lasted all night. There were no red carpets, no headlines, no glamour, only two teenagers discovering something real. 5 years later, they were married. On their wedding day, both of Ron's on-screen fathers, Andy Griffith and Tom Bosley, stood proudly among the guests. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The boy America watched grow up on TV had found his true family. While fame pulled others into chaos, Ron found refuge in stability. Cheryl wasn't a celebrity, and she never tried to be. She was his anchor, his constant reminder of the world beyond Hollywood. The couple's bond grew stronger with time, weathering the pressures of celebrity life that have broken countless marriages. Ron once said, "People think there's a secret to a long marriage, but it's really just communication and respect. We've always been a team." Their team only grew when children entered the picture. Bryce, Dallas, Paige, Jocelyn, Reed, each raised with the same grounded values that shaped their father. In 2020, Ron posted a photo of his old 1970 Volkswagen Bug with a caption that melted hearts. "We'll be driving in the same 70 VW Bug I picked Cheryl up in 5 decades ago. It runs great, so do we." That line summed up his life better than any biography. While Hollywood chased reinvention, Ron found joy in constancy. He and Cheryl moved quietly through the industry, raising kids, nurturing friendships, and protecting their privacy. Fame never defined them, love did. Cheryl also played a quiet role in Ron's career. She read his scripts, gave feedback, and appeared in small cameos across his films. Their partnership wasn't just romantic, it was creative, built on trust and mutual respect. Through every red carpet, every sleepless night, and every career setback, Cheryl remained the steady rhythm beneath the noise. In a town famous for short-lived love, theirs became a miracle of endurance. A reminder that even in Hollywood, some stories don't fade to black. By the late 1970s, Ron Howard had done what few child stars ever managed. He grew up without losing himself. But the life of a sitcom actor, no matter how beloved, no longer satisfied him. After Happy Days, he realized that what he wanted most wasn't to stand in front of the camera. It was to control what happened behind it. He had spent his childhood absorbing the rhythms of directors and cinematographers, watching how story and emotion were built through framing, light, and silence. The fascination never left him. Now he was ready to try it himself. In 1977, Ron made his directorial debut with Grand Theft Auto. It wasn't a studio tentpole or a glossy blockbuster. It was a scrappy, low-budget car comedy produced by Roger Corman, the same man who gave many young filmmakers their first shot. Corman offered Ron a deal few would dare take. "You can direct, but only if you also star in it." Ron agreed, then spent 36 sleepless hours writing the outline. When the film hit theaters, critics were surprised. Beneath the crashes and chaos was a sense of rhythm and clarity rare for a first-time director. The movie turned a profit and, more importantly, turned heads. Hollywood began to see Ron Howard differently. He wasn't just the red-haired kid from Mayberry anymore. He was a storyteller with vision. But he knew this was only the beginning. "I had to earn trust," he later said. "Actors didn't immediately believe in me as a director." To prove himself, he worked tirelessly. His next project, Night Shift 1982, paired him again with his Happy Days co-star Henry Winkler and introduced a young, energetic newcomer, Michael Keaton. The film's offbeat humor and heart proved that Ron could balance comedy with emotional honesty. It marked the true beginning of his directorial identity. Still, he was hungry for something bigger. A story that blended humanity and wonder, laughter and love. That chance arrived in 1984 with Splash, a romantic fantasy about a man who falls in love with a mermaid. It was whimsical, risky, and perfect for a man redefining his career. In just a few years, Ron Howard had gone from sitcom nostalgia to directorial promise. But Splash would change everything, propelling him into the Hollywood elite and beginning an era of films that would define generations. By the early 1990s, Ron Howard had become the quiet craftsman of Hollywood, a director who prized authenticity over hype. His work wasn't loud, it was lived in. He chased the kind of realism that made audiences forget they were watching a movie at all. After the romantic warmth of Splash and the heartfelt comedy of Parenthood, he was ready for something grittier, something that burned. That spark became Backdraft 1991, a film about the brotherhood and peril of Chicago firefighters. Howard refused to fake the danger. Instead of relying on optical tricks, he shot with real flames, filling warehouses with smoke so thick cameras sometimes jammed. "We had 10 real firefighters on standby with extinguishers," he later said, half smiling, half exhausted. The intensity paid off. Backdraft was praised for its searing realism and human heart. Beneath the spectacle was Howard's signature theme, ordinary people facing extraordinary pressure. Ron Howard had gone from sitcom nostalgia to cinematic grandeur, from small-town warmth to outer space survival. In mastering both fire and flight, he proved that realism could be as thrilling as fantasy, and that sincerity, not spectacle, was his greatest special effect. Success can dazzle, but it also isolates. By the turn of the millennium, Ron Howard stood atop Hollywood, his name already linked to Splash Parenthood and Apollo 13. Yet the next film he made would carry him higher still, and cost him more than he expected. In 2001, Howard began work on A Beautiful Mind, a portrait of mathematician John Nash's brilliance and descent into schizophrenia. He approached it not as spectacle, but as empathy. Every detail mattered: the whisper of chalk, the tremor in Russell Crowe's hands, the thin line between genius and delusion. Howard's camera never judged, it simply observed, letting viewers slip inside Nash's fragile brilliance. The film became both intimate and immense, a story about intellect and humanity, two things Ron Howard understood better than most. When the movie swept the Oscars, Best Picture and Best Director among them, Ron stood on stage, humble as ever. His longtime friend Tom Hanks handed him the statue, a moment that felt like Hollywood completing a circle. Opie Taylor had grown into a master craftsman. He didn't gloat, didn't posture. He simply thanked his family, his collaborators, and the quiet lessons of his parents. But as cameras flashed, his heart was heavy. Just months earlier, he had lost his mother, John Spiegel Howard, at 73. She had played Tom Hanks's mother in Apollo 13. Her final role in the art she'd given him. "Mom would have loved this night," he whispered backstage. That grief changed him. From then on, Howard's films carried a deeper patience, a slower rhythm of empathy. He poured himself into Frost Nixon, revealing power and vulnerability in equal measure, into Cinderella Man, where loss and grit became poetry. He stopped chasing applause and started chasing truth. Awards still came, but they no longer defined him. His compass was internal now. In 2003, he surprised audiences again, not with a blockbuster, but with his voice. He became the narrator of Arrested Development, his calm wit threading chaos with warmth. Audiences loved it. Critics called it the sound of trust. That gentle humor showed another facet of the man who had endured the extremes of fame and failure. By the time Frost Nixon earned him new Oscar nominations in 2008, Ron Howard had already achieved something rarer than trophies: peace. He had proven that artistry could coexist with humility, and that even amid grief, creation could heal. The boy who once looked up to his father on set was now the mentor, the quiet force guiding Hollywood's next generation to tell stories that mattered. In 2018, Ron Howard stepped into one of the most high-pressure challenges of his career, directing solo a Star Wars story. By then, he had won Oscars, earned global acclaim, and directed some of cinema's most enduring works. But the galaxy far, far away brought a kind of turbulence even he hadn't faced before. Taking over Star Wars was like being handed the controls of a spaceship mid-flight. Sets were built, actors were halfway through filming, and expectations were sky-high. He reshot major scenes, reworked character arcs, and rebuilt the tone, all while honoring the franchise's legacy. The pressure was immense. Fans were still reeling from The Last Jedi controversy, and anything short of perfection risked becoming a target. When Solo finally hit theaters, it didn't explode, it glided. Critics praised its craftsmanship and heart, but box office numbers fell short of Disney's lofty expectations. Many blamed franchise fatigue or marketing missteps. Others argued that audiences were still polarized by earlier Star Wars films. Ron didn't make excuses, he simply said, "I'm proud of Solo, and I feel badly when people who'd enjoy it don't see it on a big screen." That simple, humble response summed him up perfectly. Proud of his work, never bitter about outcomes. He knew filmmaking was never about control, it was about contribution. Even when the numbers disappointed, he focused on the crew's effort, the artistry, and the shared experience of creation. Then came a new challenge: the streaming revolution. In an era where theaters were fading and algorithms decided success, even veterans like Howard had to adapt. His film 13 Lives, based on the 2018 Thailand cave rescue, was acclaimed but quietly buried by Amazon's streaming strategy. Co-star Viggo Mortensen called it "or disgrace," but Howard stayed silent, as always, letting the work speak. Howard approached the film as he always did, with empathy. He saw it as a human story about class identity and survival, not a manifesto, but the timing was cruel. The memoir's author, J.D. Vance, had since become a polarizing political figure, and by 2024, vice president under Donald Trump. The film's release linked Howard, unfairly, to the heated rhetoric surrounding Vance. Suddenly, What had begun as a drama about family was being dissected as a political statement. Critics pounced. Many accused Hillbilly Elegy of whitewashing poverty or glorifying conservative ideals. Others dismissed it as Oscar bait. The reviews were brutal, but while critics tore it apart, audiences responded differently. The movie climbed Netflix's charts, and viewers praised its honesty and emotional performances. Howard noticed the split and chose his words carefully. "I know it's a mixed bag," he said. Critics didn't love it, but the audience response was good. "It's culturally divided. That's clear." Even after years in Hollywood, Ron still believed in nuance, in talking, not yelling. "I'm a storyteller," he once said, "not a spokesman." In a culture addicted to conflict, that made him a target, but also a mirror. Because in the end, Ron Howard's greatest controversy wasn't about politics at all. It was about refusing to hate. Through decades of fame, failure, and fierce criticism, Ron Howard never lost what made him rare: grace. From the Andy Griffith Show to A Beautiful Mind, he built a career on empathy, humility, and quiet mastery. In an era of outrage and ego, he remains proof that decency still matters. His legacy isn't just in films or awards. It's in the way he listens, learns, and leads without noise. "I'm proud of my work," he once said, "and I try to do right by people." That's Ron Howard, the storyteller who turned kindness into art and silence into strength. If you admire his journey, share this story, hit like, and subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's most fascinating lives.